Hello and welcome to All Hands on Tech, where today's leaders talk tomorrow's technology. I'm Jeremy Morgan. Data is everywhere, and people are using data to change our quality of life every day. Data literacy is the ability to read, work with, analyze, and argue with data. Both organizations and individuals can benefit by being data literate. Jordan Morrow is the Chief Nerd Officer at Click, and he's been a pioneer of the field of data literacy. He's developed methods and models for becoming more data literate. In this podcast, we talk about how you can learn to understand and interpret data better. We talk about what data literacy is and the 4 levels of analytics. So let's welcome Jordan Morrow. Could you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for Click?
Yeah. So my name is Jordan Morrow. I'm the global head of data literacy for Click, which all that really means, and my nickname is officially Click's Chief Nerd Officer. So my entire world revolves around empowering people with being in enterprises with the ability to use data more effectively.
Awesome. So how did you land in this position doing what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've been at Click since 2016. And before that, I was actually at a really large financial service firm managing a large BI world. And I had my first ideas of data literacy while in that role, so about 5 or 6 years ago. And when I presented those ideas, I was told no. They wanted me just to kind of do the standard training, this and that. And then at Click, a role opened up, and it was all around analytical learning, which is what I was trying to do with data literacy and everything. And I was pretty much hired on the spot, started the journey, and was one of, if not the pioneer who really got this field going. And yeah, 4 years going this year and loving it. I mean, there's so much to do in it.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I would definitely say you're a pioneer. I had never even heard the term before we talked last summer. And now it seems like it's kind of popped up in other places, and I'm seeing it kind of pop up. So for the people out there who have never heard of data literacy, what is data literacy?
Yeah, so data literacy, if you take it from kind of a non-conventional definition, it's basically your comfort or confidence to be able to use data. And then if you want to go to like a pure definition, it's this ability to read, work with, analyze, and then communicate with data. And I will emphasize, notice we didn't say data science in there. Not everyone needs to be a data scientist. In fact, the vast majority of people do not. But in this day and age, you have to have confidence with data in being able to ask questions of it, communicate with it, have dialogue. And that's the essence of data literacy itself.
Yeah, that's interesting, because a lot of times when I speak with people about data, that's one of the first things I say is, I don't know anything about data science. I don't know anything about math. I don't know anything about any of this, so I don't want to know any of it, kind of period. And so the idea of data literacy seems to be more like, if you're not a scientist, you're not an engineer, you're not any of these things, you don't have to be, but it can help you with your existing job or your existing role that you're in right now. Do I have a clear idea of that? Like, the data literacy kind of can apply to almost anybody that's out there.
Anybody. Yeah, you're spot on, because again, if you look at the size of like the global workforce, a very small fraction are those technical jobs that use data or are comfortable with databases, with coding, et cetera, like statistician, data scientist, engineer, et cetera. The vast majority of people, whether you go into the arts and humanities or you go into marketing or all these different things, regardless of whether a person wants to believe it or not, everything has become a role where data can touch it, data can be used in it. And so data literacy is there to help alleviate any stress people have in using data, and really to empower them with confidence that says, hey, you're fine. Use your background. Use the skills you developed in the arts. Use your skills you developed in whatever degree you got in school.
So yeah, I think people would be a little bit apprehensive, not knowing a lot about it, especially if you spent like an entire career. Like, you and I are probably roughly the same age, so you remember what it was like 20 years ago. I don't know how we survived. Like, I don't know how businesses moved with the amount of data that was being used back then,
right,
compared to what it is now. And I think there probably is a little bit of apprehension from people who are like, I don't really want to get involved in that. I've been spending my entire career getting really good at what I do. So what would you say to to somebody like that? Like say, I could use myself as an example, being a software engineer up until recently. I could say, well, I've been focused on being a software engineer. What do I need data literacy for?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a really good point. Well, I'm going to address the apprehension part and then dive right into what you would need it for. Like we just recently, it launched just a week ago, basically, a brand new research report that we did with over around 9,000 or 9,000 plus respondents. We were trying to assess essentially that apprehension that you're talking about, that overwhelming feeling that people have had for a long time now. Because if you take a step back, I mean, when you look at the topic of data, math, statistics, all these things, historically, they've been intimidating topics, right? You think I have to go advanced, I have to have these technical skills and all of this. Plus, employees who, to your point, have been doing their job for a long time, how often are they hearing time and time again, oh, we invested in this software for the data and that, and we're doing this now and we're doing that now. It becomes overwhelming. And that's what this research report found, that we found quite literally that each employee, so per employee per company, loses roughly over 40 hours a year of working hours due to like this overwhelming and stressful feeling with data and technology. And when you equated that to numbers, in the United States alone, that was the equivalent of $100 billion or so lost. That's billion with a B. $100 billion lost because of this apprehension, this stress. And I think it's because people do feel, one, the topics are intimidated. Two, let's be honest, they're sick of hearing about it. And three, they're tired of having something pushed down on them again. And what I say to them is, look, that's not what we're trying to do. Data literacy looks to remove that stigma. And all it's doing is saying to you, look, you're right. You've been doing your job and you're really good at it. You've been doing it for 10, 15, 20 years. All we're trying to do with data literacy is say, hey, let's give you some more skills that will allow you to maybe do that job even better, that will allow you to do that job more effectively, freeing up some of your time, giving you more ability to maybe do some of the things you've never been able to do. And that's what that confidence comes with when you become more data literate, because you're no longer looking at all those things being pushed down on you as a bombarding thing. More so you can use it as a weapon for yourself to do your job more effectively.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. And if an organization does adopt data literacy and they get, significant amount of their people up and running and really data literate, as you would say, what kind of effect do you think that has on the company or the organization as a whole?
Great question. So the part of, in my world, what we've done is we've conducted a few big research projects because of questions just like that. It's one thing for me to go around and say, hey, look what data literacy can do. But it was another for us to kind of quantify it. So we did a different study that really studied what benefit comes from being a more data literate organization. So we partnered with the Wharton School of Business and another organization to build this big nerdy study, if you want to call it that. And what we found was those organizations that were top tier data literate had 3 to 5% more like enterprise value. Like, so if you're isolating or looking at, I should say, the quality of data literacy, those that were top tier, that 3 to 5% value equated to literally hundreds of millions of dollars. We also found that organizations that are more data literate, they're quicker to market, they have better return on sales, they have better return on equity. That's the enterprise wide. And I think that makes sense, right? Intuitively, it makes sense that if you're better with data, you're going to get more value. For the individuals themselves, what they can do for you is, one, help you eliminate that apprehension and the overwhelming stress that you get. But two, people that were found to be more confident in their data literacy skills felt they had more credibility at work. They felt that they were performing really well at their job compared to their counterparts who did not feel that confidence with data. So there's all these plus benefits that come from it. And again, I think that makes a lot of intuitive sense, because instead of feeling stressed and overwhelmed, you see this power of data and using it for good that can benefit your career. And in essence, it can also benefit the enterprise itself.
Yeah, and that does make sense. And so I'm just kind of assuming, just based on what you've just told me, that probably where the waste is being cut is like in decision making. So basically not chasing down the wrong thing and then coming back to the right thing that you should have done. With data literacy and being able to analyze and use data properly, maybe you'll make better decisions quicker. Would that be kind of an accurate assumption?
It is. Like the essence, if you think about data literacy, probably the number one essence that comes from it is the ability to make a smarter data-informed decision. And I stress the word informed because what we're saying with data literacy is let's combine the human element with the data element, not replace one or the other. And by empowering people to make smarter decisions because they have data to back it up, data to support, etc., to your point, you're able to sift maybe through the weeds faster. You're able to diagnose and find insight faster. And you're able to get things out there faster. And when you're more data literate, you understand that it's an iterative approach. So with an iterative approach, you understand it might not be perfect, but that you can come back to it, so on and so forth. So there's just a ton of benefits that it really can bring to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I worked for years ago in the beginning of my career for a very large video store. Right, video retailer. And one of the positions they had there, they had a couple of people who would sit and watch movies all day long, which sounds like a dream job if you like movies, but both of them were like, no, this is real work, you know. And so they would watch movies.
I think it would get old pretty quick.
Yeah, I would imagine. And what they would do is take the movie and say it's this type of movie, and people who like this movie might like this movie, and map it all together. And it was a very, very manual process because this was 20 years ago. And now, you know, Netflix does that in a split of a second, you know, at least. So that's one of the things I think where people get apprehensive about, you know, it's going to take all our jobs. I think they think of cases like that. Like there's no more two people sitting in a cubicle watching movies by hand. We have this algorithm that's doing it, but somebody has to build the algorithm. I think is the answer to that. And somebody has to maintain the data and maintain whether or not that's accurate. Is that something that you would agree with?
Yep. 100%. There's a report out there. And if you look at every industrial revolution or every big like industrial revolution shift, more jobs are created than are eliminated. And that is the same prediction that is going on now. The McKinsey report is a really good one that talks about this, that more jobs will be created during this revolution shift that's going on to this digital world. But what it requires is, one, it's happening faster, and that just makes sense with technology. But two, it does require maybe the reskilling and the upskilling and new education and things like that. And that's what data literacy looks to do, is someone who might not have had that skill before now does. And so, yes, I completely agree. Yes, jobs will be eliminated. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But if you reskill them and give them new tools to succeed in this new era, then why does that matter? You know, it's all about that reskilling and upskilling of people to be able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've said before that this is a skill that anyone can learn, pretty much anyone from any walk of life. So what is something that someone could do to get started in being better at data literacy?
Yeah, so for me, when I think of the beginning, I always I've coined what I call the 3 C's of data literacy. The first one is something that actually comes naturally to humans, but when we become adults, we forget it. I have children, and anybody who has children can attest they ask a lot of questions.
Absolutely.
But for whatever reason, when we become adults, guess what we stop doing?
Yep.
We stop asking questions. Our curiosity goes away. The first thing I tell people to get started on a data literacy journey is you don't need to worry about all this learning and all that. Just ask more questions. If someone puts like a chart in front of you or a dashboard or whatever it is, ask 50 questions about it. Just be curious and start digging in. That to me is the key to data literacy. The second C is be creative. If someone brings you all this data, get creative with it. Tell a story with it. And then the third C is critical thinking. It's actually thinking on it. Now, when we go to the learning side of things, for Pluralsight, for example, I've built 8 executive briefing videos. They're short, concise, all about data literacy. And the thing you don't find in there, math formulas. It's all the theories. It's all the what this is, what that is. I've also got, through my role at Click, everything I built is product agnostic pretty much. So, and by the way, free. So anybody can go in there, assess themselves, find where their starting point is, and just start taking courses. Like that to me is still a part of the first C, which was curiosity, right? You need to get out there and study what's out there. Watch the executive briefings that are on Pluralsight. You'll hear me talk about different topics within data literacy that will spark curiosity, that will spark you to read different things and do those things. And I'm an open book. Heck, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm an open book, and I'll give you 1,000 things to read. I love to read. So it's all these different things to be able to do it, but it just has to start with curiosity. That, like, right there is that fundamental foundation to just get going.
What is something that you wish you knew about data 20 years ago?
I wish I would have, 20 years ago, man, I wish I would have been able to see back then just how quickly it was going to come about. And what I mean by that is, data literacy, when I started this thing a few years ago, that term really wasn't anywhere. Now it's everywhere. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, iPhones didn't exist. Now smartphones are synonymous everywhere. You probably wouldn't have really heard the term Internet of Things, 10, 15 years ago. Now the Internet of Things collects data everywhere. So 20 years ago, I wish I would have known, I would have changed my study habits. You know what I mean? Because I wish I would have known just how prevalent this was going to become. But I mean, the other thing, I wish I would have known just how easy it is to be good at asking questions of data and being curious. When you're in your college days or early in your career and doing things, you just kind of get in the mode of this is what you do, and you do it every day. I wish I would have been more curious 20 years ago and asking different things of the data. I think that could have projected things even faster for me.
So what are some common misconceptions you think people have about data literacy?
I think the number one is the one I kind of mentioned earlier, and that is, I think a lot of people, and it's because that's the term we hear, I think a lot of people think that data literacy means data science and technical learning and statistics and databases, and it means none of that per se. There was a quote, it's almost a decade old now, but back in, I think it was 2012, that said the sexiest job of the 21st century is the data scientist. And all sexy nerds, right? I mean, we were never called sexy, but now we're going to own it, right? But the reality is, I think that quote did a disservice, because then everybody went out pushing for data scientists, and that overstepped the broader audience, the massive workforce that is not going to be a data scientist. And so I think it's kind of in the infrastructure of our brains that data science is the end all be all, when in reality, so few people have those skills and so few people need those skills. It created this massive assumption and misconception on what is really needed with data literacy. And so that right there is the first. And I think the second big misconception is that that software and technology will solve all the problems. For far too long, companies are spending so much money on technology and software, thinking it's going to be the magic potion, thinking it's going to be this magic solution, only to find out they don't get a return on investment with it. And that is because the people that they're trying to get that technology and software to use it, they can't adopt it. They don't know how. They don't have skills in data literacy. And so that right there, when I talk to organizations or I go and speak somewhere, is what we try and flip in the mind is that, this data and this technology and software will not do it for you. Your workforce has to be confident with data before they will adopt anything you've invested in. And by adoption, I mean truly use it to the effect that you want it to be used.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of organizations, at least in my experience, have kind of worked backwards, where they're like, we need to get the technology, we need to start collecting the data. Now we're going to have a data scientist, and this person's going to produce all of these neat, nifty things. And then I think they run into exactly what you spoke about. Like, they've produced all this data and have all these nifty things, and then they pass it down to others, and they're like, okay, what do I do with this? Make some guesses and things like that. So what you're saying is kind of a backwards approach. So building it out to the people who aren't directly involved with the technical part of it and kind of moving inward. Is that a correct assumption?
No, and the way that I tell companies is, you're exactly right. Historically, what they've done is they invest in the technology and then they try and force fit a strategy into that technology versus the flip. You need to start with a strategy first, and then the technology will fall into place based on the strategy. And a huge portion of that strategy is, how are you going to get your people up to speed to be able to do this right? And that's the key to getting this started, is start with a good data and analytical strategy that includes the empowerment of your workforce to use data effectively. Then as you start to expand the strategy and start to roll it out, you'll realize, oh, I need a BI tool. Oh, I need this sort of database or this cloud or whatever it is. And that will fall into place, all the while in parallel your workforce is being skilled up to be able to use whatever technologies you find to help facilitate the strategy. Tools should not be the strategy. They should be there to facilitate the strategy. And for far too long, tools were the strategy. And so that is that. You're exactly right. It is flipping it on its head. And when that is done properly, you can see data and analytical success. But I'm sorry, far too often what I see is that technology first, and then they're not getting the fruit of what they've invested in.
Yeah, I ran into that a lot as a consultant. And one of the first things I would say is, as I was coming in, they're like, we have this and we have this, and start, talking about the technologies and everything. And then I would shake everybody up and say, okay, wait a minute, what problem are we trying to solve? Let's start there. And then all of a sudden everybody's like, whoa, well, we're trying to do this. And, it's like you have to kind of work from there. So I can see a lot of similarities there.
All I was going to say is you're spot on. With data and analytics, just like you talked about, it's the same. What problem are you trying to solve? You can't just invest in a lot of data and think, oh, this is fantastic. It's the analogy I use all the time is, if you like to go fishing, you don't go to a lake, hold your arms up, and hope a fish jumps out of the water into your arms. It's the same thing with data. You can't just buy all this software and technology and source all this data and hope the insight's going to come out of it. You need problems to solve. You need outcomes that you're trying to get to, just like you just described.
Absolutely. One of the things, and you have a really good analogy for this, but one of the things I think that's a good place for people to start are talking about the 4 levels of analytics. And could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the 4 levels of analytics, far too often, and this goes right back to this problem that we're describing, that we've invested in technology and that's going to solve the problems. The problem with that is there are actually 4 levels of analytics, not just one. It's not just analytics. The 4 levels are descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. And I love to describe this like going to a doctor. Imagine you're sick. Okay, you've been sick for a week. People can look at you and tell. You go into your doctor's office. You're waiting in the doctor's office. The doctor comes in and looks at you, says, you are sick, leaves the room, never to come back. How many people would go back to that doctor? What that doctor just did was descriptive analytics. And this is what's happening. Companies around the world spend the majority of their time in descriptive analytics. And all descriptive analytics is describing what has happened in the past. That's descriptive analytics. Other words for this are data visualizations, dashboards, reporting, KPIs. These are things that are necessary, don't get me wrong, but we should not be spending the majority of our time there. So we go back to the doctor. Now imagine the doctor says, you are sick and here is why. You've gotten to the why side of it. That's the second level of analytics, which is diagnostic analytics. Data literacy seeks to truly help individuals get good at diagnostic analytics. That's where the majority of organizations should spend their time. The third level is predictive analytics. Same thing with the doctor. The doctor is going to say, I predict you take this medicine, you get bed rest, you do this, you do that, you'll overcome it. And sometimes you're not right. And that is one of the things that people need to understand about data and analytics. Not every prediction is going to come true. That's not the point of predicting something, right? If there's an 80% chance of something happening, that means 1 out of 5 times it's not going to happen. And you have to be okay with that. And then the fourth level is prescriptive analytics. And this is where we're getting really advanced. It's similar to predictive, but in prescriptive, your data and analytics will be telling you what you should be doing. It will prescribe it for you. Most companies are stuck at level 1, and they spend the majority of their money at levels 3 and 4. All the while, the human element, which is diagnostic analytics level 2. And don't get me wrong, there's human element in all of it. But if you create a data literate workforce who knows how to work through these 4 levels and make it known that it's not like these 4 levels are divided equally. You don't spend a quarter of your time in each. No. The majority of your people will spend the majority of their time in level 2 when they get better at data literacy. And when you absorb those 4 levels of analytics, that's when your strategy can really succeed.
Yeah, and that's really helpful to kind of have that framework, I think, to kind of step back and look at everything and look at the approach. And I think the doctor analogy for that is perfect, because we don't give a lot of thought to the steps and the process sometimes with these things. It's just kind of go at it, look at it, and figure it out and move. So yeah, that kind of framework is pretty nice. So what do you think is coming down the road for data literacy or data in general? Like what things are kind of exciting that are coming?
Yeah, I think we're going to see more. At Click, we like to call AI augmented intelligence, right? I think that's what we're going to see with data and analytics. The human element needs to be there, right? The creativity, the curiosity, all of that. You can't just leave it to the data. If we do that, we've seen what happens with like black box algorithms and things like that. They can be biased, racist, all these different things that are so negative that come from the data. But what I think we're going to see advancing within data and analytics and data literacy is the ability of the tool to augment us even more. So imagine if historically something you were working on took you 2 to 3 hours to build a dashboard or whatever. Let's say the tool augments it now and it only takes 15 minutes. You've now freed up 2 to 3 hours of your time to be more curious, ask more questions, to find the diagnoses within the data more and more. So to me, I think that augmented analytics is going to become bigger, where, yeah, the tools and technology can do more than they've done before, freeing up the human capability to combine it with that augmented intelligence and allowing us to do more. And I think that's one of those keys that's coming down even more. And we're seeing it. We're starting to see it already. But I think some of these advances that are coming in this world are really going to free up people's time to bring that creativity, to bring the ability to tell stories to the data, which makes it more human, which makes it more impactful. I think those things are here, and I'm excited for them. I think they're awesome.
Yeah, that is pretty exciting. And I think that's a good way to sell it to people, for lack of a better word, as far as getting people excited about data literacy. Is this will give you time to do more of what you do and allow you to pour more of you and what you're good at into what you're doing. What are you working on right now? Is there anything any cool projects you can tell us about?
Yeah, the big one we just did is like just last week at our company sales kickoff, we actually announced to the world our brand new data literacy consulting. And so a lot of my time, as you can imagine, is spent on that now because it just launched to the world. What that is if you think about it, all my stuff, pretty much everything is free. And it's product agnostic. I think there's one course out there that uses our Click product to show you how to do R and Python, which is more for the technical side. But other than that, it's free, product agnostic. It allows people to just go play in there. But the feedback that we got was, we need more help. We need people to be with us to drive these new strategies. We've tried for years, as we all know, and nothing's been working. So we launched this large business line to provide that. That's something I'm spending a ton of time on. I'm writing a lot. I'm doing a lot for Pluralsight, which makes me excited, getting more and more involved there, driving more things for the non-technical area, which is Pluralsight's been so focused on the technical, and rightfully so, computer science and everything. And they've asked me to drive more into that non-technical side with courses, with writing, with podcasts, and yeah, so there's a ton going on. I mean, it's like my nickname of being Chief Nerd Officer. I geek out on this stuff. So that is a very formidable nickname that I have.
Yeah, I love that title. I'm quite jealous of that title, actually. I'm sometimes called the resident nerd here at the workplace, and
I love it.
I wear it as a badge of honor.
Oh, for sure. My son wants me to get him a shirt that says Junior Chief Nerd Officer.
That's awesome. That's pretty cool. So I have one final question for you, and this is my surprise question of the podcast. So imagine you've been given an elephant and you can't give it away or sell it. What would you do with that elephant?
Oh, dude, I'd keep it as a pet in a heartbeat. I would keep it as a pet. I would, knowing my personality, I would dig in and figure out how in the world do you take care of an elephant? And I would become best friends with that elephant. So I'm all up for challenges. I'm all up for learning. And in this case, if I have to learn how to take care of that big elephant, finding land for it or whatever, dude, I'm going to rock it and I'm going to have an elephant.
Awesome. That's a great answer. Is there anything that you want to talk about that I didn't ask?
The only thing I would say is for anyone listening, please connect with me on LinkedIn. As you know, I'm an open book. I will share the world and what I can on this topic. And I want people to feel that, again, they don't have to be a data scientist. Just get going with this. Research it. Reach out to me. Let's help you on your journey. And that would be that final point I share is don't hesitate to reach out to people who have an expertise in the things that interest you. One of the number one things you can do is build your network and to be genuine about it. Don't be fake, of course, but be genuine about it and reach out to me. I will help you along your journey to make this happen. Awesome.
Well, thank you very much for talking with us today.
Yeah, thank you. It's been fun. Always.
Jordan Morrow is the Chief Nerd Officer at Click, a leading business intelligence company. You can check them out on the web at qlik.com. Be sure to look for Jordan's Tech Talk, Why Everyone Should Be Data Literate, on YouTube. Thank you for listening to All Hands on Tech. If you like it, please rate us. You can see episode transcripts and more at pluralsight.com/podcast.